joining me at Kurt Vonnegut Memorial Library. I'm so proud and happy to be here. This is the first time I've actually visited the library, and it's beautiful. I met Kurt Vonnegut once. I'll talk to Corey because I'm reading you a story. That's the conceit of the event. Corey lives here at the library, and I'm reading to him. I met Kurt Vonnegut once on the occasion of my college graduation because he spoke at the. He wasn't the official speaker, but he was the. He spoke to the School of Arts and Sciences. And so I interviewed him for the school paper. He told me two things that have stayed with me. One of which is that the internet was just a fad. This was in 1990, and I kind of love that. And I think about it a lot when I think about some of the, I mean, obviously we all love the internet, it's great, but I think about some of the destructive qualities that it has, especially for writers, in terms of distraction and all that stuff. And I'm like, sometimes I wish Vonnegut had been right on that one. The other thing he told me is that when you were writing a book, what you should do for your second draft is take the first 30 pages of your first draft and throw them away. And I think that is very valuable advice, because sometimes we spend a lot of time getting started before it really starts. So when you were writing your books, Corey, remember that. That is my message to you from Kurt Vonnegut.
I just made Heather do that.
Yes.
Did you literally do it?
Throw it away.
Yeah. You got to look at that subject. You're just throat clear. You're just getting started.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm going to read to you from a book that has been frequently banned called Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, whose real name was Samuel Clemens, and he got his pseudonym Mark Twain because from the world of steamboats, when you would be going in a steamboat, you had to call out how many fathoms deep or whatever the water was. You would say Mark 1, Mark Twain, so that's where it came from. And this book is about two friends. His names are Huckleberry and Jim. And Huckleberry is a little kid, and Jim is a grown-up man. And Huckleberry has white skin, and Jim has dark skin, but they are best friends, and they run away together to have adventures. Because Jim's life is really bad. Because at the time and place where he was living, people with dark skin were treated really, really bad. They were trying to run away. And they run away on a raft. And they live on a raft on a river for a long time. And they have these adventures. So this is Huckleberry describing his life on the raft. So just close your eyes, Corey. Pretend it's not still completely daylight outside. And that you're not living on a pretty crowded intersection here. And try to imagine living life on a river with your best friend. 2 or 3 days and nights went by. I reckon I might say they swum by. They slid along so quiet and smooth and lovely. Here's the way we put in the time. It was a monstrous big river down there, sometimes 1.5 miles wide. We run nights and laid up and hid daytimes. Soon as night was most gone, we stopped navigating and tied up. Nearly always in the dead water under a towhead, and then cut young cottonwoods and willows and hid the raft under them. Then we set out the lines for fish. Next we slid into the river and had a swim, so as to freshen up and cool off. Then we sat down on the sandy bottom where the water was about knee-deep and watched the daylight come. Not a sound anywhere, perfectly still. Just like the whole world was asleep, only sometimes the bullfrogs a-cluttering maybe. The first thing to see, looking out over the water, was a kind of dull line. That was the woods on the other side. You couldn't make nothing else out. Then a pale place in the sky, then more paleness spreading around. Then the river softened up, a way off, and weren't black anymore, but gray. You could see little dark spots drifting along, ever so far away, trading scows and such things, and long black streaks, rafts. Sometimes you could hear a sweep squeaking, or jumbled up voices. It was so still, and sounds come so far. And by, you could see a streak on the water, which you knew by the look of the streak that there's a snag there and a swift current, which breaks on it and makes that streak look that way. And you see the mist curl up off the water, and the east reddens up, and the river. And you make out a log cabin in the edge of the woods, away on the bank on the other side of the river, being a wood yard likely. And piled by them sheets so you can throw a dog through it anywheres. Then the nice breeze springs up, and comes fanning you from over there, so cool and fresh and sweet to smell on account of the woods and the flowers. But sometimes not that way, because they've left dead fish lying around, garbs and such, and they do get pretty rank. And next thing, you've got the full day, and everyone's smiling in the sun, and the songbirds just going it. That's all one sentence. It's a lot of semicolons, a lot of break dashes. It's all one sentence, because he's got a rolling rhythm. Rolling like what?
Like a river.
Like a river. Twain. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit and talk about the things that they talk about, the two of them. Sometimes we'd have that whole river all to ourselves for the longest time. Yonder was the banks and the islands, across the water, and maybe a spark, which was a candle in the cabin window. And sometimes on the water, you could see a spark or two, on a raft or a scow, you know, and maybe you could hear a fiddle or a song coming over from one of them crafts. It's lovely to live on a raft. We had the sky up there, all speckled with stars, and we used to lay on our backs and look up at them and discuss about whether they was made or only just happened. Jim, he allowed they was made, but I allowed they happened. I judged it would have took too long to make so many. Jim said the moon could have laid them. Well, that looked kind of reasonable, so I didn't say nothing against it, because I've seen a frog lay almost as many, so of course it could be done. We used to watch the stars that fell, too, and see them streak down. Jim allowed they got spoiled and was hove out of the nest. Hove means to throw out. Yeah, you knew that, of course. Once or twice of a night, we would see a steamboat slipping along in the dark, and now and then she would belch a whole world of sparks up and out of her chimblies. Just by the way, does anybody know the really, really famous book that uses the word chimblies, the original pronunciation of the word chimney? It's in The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, when he nimbly sneaks through the chimney. And whenever I've read that book my whole life, I go, Seuss cheated.
Yes.
He made up the word chimney, but he didn't cheat. Twain used it in Huckleberry Finn. It's a regionalism. And I looked it up in the dictionary. It is a regional variant of the word chimney. So Seuss never cheated. It's true. When you're a real poet, you don't cheat. Except when he made up words like the ookily gook or whatever. That was a diversion. They would belch a whole world of sparks up and out of her chimneys, and they would rain down the river and look awfully pretty. Then she would turn a corner, and her lights would wink out, and her powwow shut off, and leave the river still again. And by, her waves would get to us a long time after she was gone, and joggle the raft a bit. And after that, you wouldn't hear nothing, for you couldn't tell how long, except maybe frogs or something. After midnight, the people on shore went to bed, and then for 2 or 3 hours, the shore was black. No more sparks in the cabin windows. These sparks were our clock. The first one that showed again meant morning was coming. So we hunted a place to hide and tie up right away. Huckleberry Finn, frequently banned because of its use of derogatory words that Twain was using to show how buffoon-like the people of his time were. And then, ironically, the buffoons of a contemporary time banned the book for the use of the word. Twain, I think, would have been disappointed, but would have laughed about the whole thing.
And also, he was Kurt Vonnegut's idol.
What was he?
Yeah. Kurt Vonnegut loved Mark Twain, and in fact, he named his son Mark Vonnegut after Mark Twain.
I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, they have a very similar.
They do. And there's something about Twain that people always, he can be easily dismissed as having a sort of a limited intellectual palette, that his stories are sort of regional and fun and sarcastic, but not necessarily deep and edifying. And I think Vonnegut is often written off the same way as being, well, you know, the language that he uses is simple. The stories are deceptively simple. But in both writers, there's a ton going on that you don't appreciate until you read it closely. So, yes, Soul Brothers. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for inviting me. This is a treat. Thanks, guys.